Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Brittany Johnson and welcome to my everyday life. This first video series is going to be about my daughter Madison's autism. So what we're going to be talking about in this very first video is when we noticed she wasn't hitting her milestones, when we noticed she wasn't of typical development, and when we started getting concerned. So this whole video is going to cover everything that entailed those first few years, our reactions, how we felt about it. It's going to be real and raw, and maybe some of you are going through the same thing, and if you have any questions about it, you could always leave the questions down below and let me know what your concerns are. Obviously, I'm not a physician, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist. I can't say anything's right or wrong, but if you're a mom, if you're a parent, you got to trust that gut instinct and really just check on, it's all about your child at that point. It's not about you, it's not about your pride, it's about your child. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this very first video about Madison Johnson. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of her diagnosis, I want to give you guys a background story of Maddie and her autism journey. So she was born November of 2014. Yep, November of 2014. And she was a huge baby. She's 9 pounds, 2 ounces, full of piss and vinegar. She was just super happy all the time. There's a lot of things, hindsight, having a new baby now, we realize oh wow, there is a big difference there. But when you have a newborn, you don't really think anything, you don't think autism right away, you know what I mean? You're like, oh, okay, well, she doesn't like talking to other people or looking at other people. She just likes looking at me and her dad. But anyways, I'll get into that later. So yeah, she was born November of 2014. She was hitting every single milestone. She was hitting every milestone, especially gross motor milestones right away, right off the bat. She had no problem with those milestones at all. And then my husband got deployed when she was 13 months old. He got deployed. And then Madison and I we were stationed in England, which is RAF Lakenheath. We were stationed at RAF Lakenheath, and when he got deployed, we actually flew back to Arizona to get a little bit more support during that deployment time. Well, that's when we kind of started noticing all of a sudden, she was saying things first of all, she was walking really, really well, but her verbal her communication and social skills just went backwards. So she wasn't making eye contact. She wasn't smiling at people or acknowledging her name. And then she, all vocabulary was gone because she was saying things like mama, nana, papa, dada, stuff like that. Which it was just gone. There was no interest in saying, no interest in learning, nothing like that. She was just super fixated on, if she had a toy, she would just stare at it for hours and play with it. And then, or if Bubble Guppies was on, she would be tuned into Bubble Guppies and nothing else existed on planet Earth, according to her. So that's when we kind of started getting concerned. And I, as a mom, I was like, no, she's fine. She's fine. I just, this is all such a big change for her. Her dad just got deployed. We just uprooted her from England to, she didn't really know my parents because we're a military family. So she only met them. Well, they met her when she was a newborn. She didn't remember them. So I kept making excuses oh no, it's just, she's in shock. It's a big move. Everything's just so much change. She's fine. So I kept saying all that, and fast forward, her gross motor kept increasing and it was awesome. But still no communication, no vocabulary, nothing like that. So with that being said, fast forward to when my husband came home, he noticed a completely different child when he got home. It was he was so shocked, and it was so upsetting to him. It was a point of contention for a while, what happened when I was away on deployment and stuff like that. And we finally got her into her not a developmental pediatrician. We got her into her primary care manager at RAF Lake and Heath when we got back from Arizona, and they got us set up with services right away, which was so awesome. And what we were so new, like we didn't know what occupational therapy was. We didn't know like they were explaining all these things to us and we didn't know what they were talking about. And it was just a shock at first to like admit, and like it was such a hard pill to swallow that your child needed extra help. You know, that was for me like really, really, really hard, because you never think it's going to be your child at all. You don't think it's going to be you. It's never you until it happens to you. And then you're like, what the F, you know, how do I get through this? And at that point, it wasn't even at that point. It was still really hard for me right then. But we got her into services and we started seeing her change, and we got her into the CDC, which is basically the daycare on base. And that was life-changing for her. And then as soon as she started making progress, we had to move, and we got transferred to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. So it was like another shocking thing for her. And then it was more regression, and it was just so much change in a small amount of time that it affected her pretty big. Like she does pretty well with like a change in schedule, but as far as transitions go, it takes a while for her to get used to. So yeah, those first few months of him being home from deployment and like seeing her being different, and then we're trying to figure out how to deal with that. Like, what is occupational therapy? And then trying to explain to our parents, like, yeah, Madison needs extra help, and getting over our own pride and our own like deals in our own head, saying like, it was so hard. Those first few months were pretty hard. It was just hard to see her struggle. And then also I had friends that had babies at the same time as me, and then to see their kids just totally excel and totally move forward, and Madison's still like behind, you know what I mean? She's still not, like, as of this day, she's still considered nonverbal, but she is speaking. Like, she does say sentences. She does identify things. She can name her colors, her animals, all sorts of stuff like that. But when it comes to addressing things, she's still like, no, I'm just gonna be quiet and ignore you. But I think that's just a part of her personality, to be honest with you. For Madison, that's all she's known is, you know, she's like, she doesn't even care if she's different. She's like, all right, I'm gonna do whatever I want. You know what I mean? Like, that's just her. Wrapping that all up, that was like when we first started noticing like her, they call it non-typical. There's typical development and there's non-typical development. And Madison is non-typical because she is on the autism spectrum. And that's like as well as noticing things such as her sensory stuff she didn't like. She was spun all the time. She was like flapping her arms. She was screaming, or like she didn't like certain touches and stuff like that. As you could probably hear in the background. Go watch Moana. Go watch Moana. Anyways, she didn't like the grass on her feet. She would be super happy in like a bubble bath one night, and then the next night we'd give her that same bubble bath and she would lose her mind. So it was a lot about learning how to cope with those weird tendencies. Like, as a, you know, if you don't deal with autism, if you've never been around it, you don't know. You're like, how do I address this? And I'm still learning every single day. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about how we started realizing she wasn't on track with her milestones, I guess you could say, because no kids are ever on track, but like to the point where it concerned us. And I guess my biggest takeaway for this whole thing is push your pride aside. If you have a child that you're concerned about, address it right away. Do not wait to get into therapies. Therapy is not a bad thing. Maddie loves therapy. She goes and she plays with her on all the equipment in the OT room. And speech is a big help too. We're currently working on getting her into ABA therapy, which is behavioral therapy. But yeah, address it right away, because it took over a year to get into the developmental pediatrician, which is something I'll address next about actually receiving that diagnosis. So yeah, that's a little bit of Maddie's story. That's her first part of a 3-part series in Madison's autism journey. I hope whoever watches this, if you are dealing with something like this right now, I hope you're able to relate to it. And if you have any questions or concerns, shoot me a message, and if I have any experience or any advice, I'll give it to you. But once again, I'm not a doctor or a physician or a therapist. So, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Every kid on the spectrum is so different that there's like different things that work for them. It's very, very, very specific to them. So try everything. Try all the therapies. Like, just keep trying, because it will get better. It'll get easier. And it'll get easier to say that my child is autistic, because she is, and she's on the spectrum. And that, that's just a part of Madison, and that's a part of who she is and who she'll always be. And you have to love your child for who they are. It doesn't matter, what happens to them along the way. You need to support them and be there for them, because you are their voice. You are their advocate. And always remember that. So with that being said, thank you for watching our very first video in the series. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you like what I have to say, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and be sure to click that bell so you know when I put out new content. Anyways, that is just a little snip of a day in the life of Brittany.